Hi everyone, David here from daviddumaisaudio.com, and in this video I wanted to do a head-to-head comparison between Whoosh by Tonsturm and WaveWarper by Soundmorph. So recently I've been working on a project where I need to do a lot of magic spell sounds, a lot of whooshes and casts and things like that. So these pieces of software have really been kind of the core of my work for these kinds of sounds, because that's exactly what they are really good at doing. So what I thought we would do in this video is kind of show you guys a tour of both of the software, see what they excel at, see what they're good at, and kind of show a bit of the differences, and hopefully you guys can have an idea of what each can do and perhaps which one you might want to pick up if you don't already own either of these. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. But if you haven't checked the description yet, make sure to check the description. I always have some sound effects for you guys there, so I'll make sure to have some free sound effects, probably some whooshes and spells for you guys to pick up. So check the description for that. All right, let's get going. All right, so this is WaveWarper by Soundmorph, and this is what it looks like right out of the box, right when you open it. It's not activated or anything, and this is it. So the first thing you'll probably want to do is to activate it. Won't do anything except that if you don't activate it, no sounds are going to come out, even if you load sounds in it and everything else. So first thing I like to do is just go through the audio setup, make sure I have my audio interface picked out, the sampling rate, I usually work at 96 and stuff like that. And then the other place I like to check is the WaveWarper settings. And if I show that here, make sure I record at 24-bit. I don't touch this because I don't use a touch OSC. And then for the XY pad, I'm going to set this to my mod wheel and pitch bend. So I have 1 and 11 here. So that's for this up here. So now I can control this here with my keyboard, with the faders on my keyboard. So that's awesome. All right. So and now I think we're ready to get started. So the first thing I like to do, and I'm just going to give you guys an example of what it can do here. I'm just going to load some sounds in. So I have some earthquake sounds here. So I'm just going to drop the folder right on here. And if I just move this now, the XY pad, you can already hear the sound. So let's have a quick look at how this works here. So basically, obviously, you have 3 sections here. So you have your presets up here, and just setting up your folders and stuff like that. This is your master, your master bus. This is your pre-warper, which you can see in the chain here. So this is the most. It's not exactly intuitive the way it's shown, but. So you have this left side section here, this middle section where it has all your samples, and then this right section, which is like where you play your samples either manually, or you can also switch on automatic up here. So yeah, so presets up here, you have your master bus here. I won't touch the pre-warper just yet. Then you have your samples A and samples B, and you can have 2 samples for each. So I usually like to drop a folder on here, and then it'll automatically choose 2 samples within the folder. Same thing with this B section, drop a folder and it'll choose 2 samples within this folder. And now both will be routed into the compressor. I don't really touch this. And then through the second compressor. And what's cool here then is that then you have a section, sample C, which are generally your impacts. So you want to have your impact sounds in your C section here. And then this will sidechain to your compressor. So it'll sidechain A and B so that they duck whenever the impacts hit. And the impacts or samples, the C samples here, will hit when you cross this threshold line here. So this trigger spot here. So a little confusing how it's set up, but once you kind of understand how it works, then it makes a bit more sense. So, so I dropped some sound files here. I'm going to find a few more here and put some on here in this B section here. So now they're loaded. What I like to do is then click on the fluctuator, and it just fluctuates the volume. So this is the volume bars, and as you can see, they're kind of jumping around. What you can do is you can change the rate down here of the fluctuator, and it affects all of them, including your impact sounds. So I like to keep it not too fast, maybe around 50, and then the range I like to bring down so that they're never like too quiet. So maybe something like that, maybe bring the rate up a little bit. So something like that. So they're never like below 50%. You're always going to hear them. And now if I play them together, and there you have it. So that's a quick setup of how I like to set this up. You can also put some impacts on here. So let's do some impacts here. So if I just solo this, you see it'll just trigger once you hit the C. And now what's great about this piece of software is that you can import plugins for each of these different sample banks. So what I like to do is, usually for impacts, I want to have something that's really, that has distortion or that really punches. So I like to add a distortion unit on here. So I usually have trash, so something like that. Just a really simple thing. And then so like that, and then I can always choose another one. So maybe I'll choose, I don't know. Maybe I'll do like a compressor or something like that. So I might go here, choose a compressor, bring it down, bring the ratio up. So something like that. All right. And then another thing I like to do for down here is the filter settings. So I like to bring the range all the way up. So what this does, you'll see it changes a few things. So it changes, one is the pitch. You'll see the minimum pitch and the highest pitch will change. And I think it also changes the filter settings. So if you have your min max range here, it'll be higher. And here I usually like to have all pass. Or I like to have some sort of like notch shelf like this. But for this one, I'll leave it at all pass. Like that. On my master bus, there's a few things I like to have on here. One is sometimes I'll put something like trash again just to add extra distortion to the entire sound. So I might do something like a drive. And then the next one I'll probably add is like Ozone 8, and this is just to control the sound. So usually I'll just put something like a limiter on here, maybe some compression, maybe a bit of EQ, depends. Usually just this, like that. You don't technically need this because you do have a limiter down here. I just like to have my own manual one up here, one I'm comfortable with, one I know. And then this is a basic setup. Another thing that's really cool about this one is like WaveWarper here is that you can put a plugin here. And so let's say I put something like Amalgam. Let's open this up. So this is it here. I'm going to now assign the Y parameter. So whenever I go up and down, it's going to change. I'm going to assign it to the wet dry. So there's two different ones I like to put on this parameter here. So one is I like to have the wet dry knobs. I like to assign the Y axis to the wet dry knobs, or I like to assign the Y axis to the pitch. So I'll show two different examples, but for now, let's just go with this. So if I play it, you can see the mix is changing. So that's kind of cool, especially with something like this. I can always like re-randomize all the parameters, and then I have something different. This one's kind of weird, but. And it's just so much fun to just play around because you never know what you're going to get, and it's just really cool every time. And now another thing I like to do is I like to minimize the left to right panning. That's just my preference though. I mean, I guess it depends on the kind of sounds you're creating. And then, yeah, so this is kind of a basic setup that I like to have for whenever I'm working. So so I'll show a few other examples. So I'll reset this. We'll start from scratch, and then I'll show another example of some cool things you can do with WaveWarper. All right, so let's create a patch or a sound from scratch here, and I'll kind of show you guys my workflow for the project that I'm currently working on and have been working on in the past few weeks. So the first thing I like to do is I like to import soundscapes on either of these files here. So that's what I'm doing here. And these are just They're either digital soundscapes or just stuff I've recorded, but most of them have been like resampled, and I've just created some crazy sounds with them. So that's what these are. So if I play them by themselves. So that's what they sound like. I might put it on automatic just to get me going. Now, because I'm doing like a spell kind of cast sound and I want an impact here, what I like to do and what I found to be quite useful is I'll change the pitch here. So I'll make sure the range is all the way up. And then for the pitch, I might start a little bit lower, something like that. And then I'll go straight up and then straight down so that you get this hit as soon as it goes here. So I'll go like that. By the way, to change the curve of the of these lines here, you just hold Alt and then you can drag it up and down with your mouse. And also, if you want to like delete a dot, you just Shift and then click. Or if you want to add one, you just double click on it. So now, if I play this. It's not super obvious, but it is doing like a pitch drop here. So maybe I'll put it even higher, so maybe a bit more obvious. Let's try that. And another thing you can do that's cool is you can press R. It's a key command on a keyboard, and it'll randomize all the samples that you have loaded. So I'm just going to press R, and then it's just going to shuffle through everything so I can have a new sound here. So just that, to me, is already pretty cool. So I'm now going to change here. One of the things I like to put on here, like I mentioned before, on this one here, I like to put either some sort of reverb or some sort of effect plugin where I control the mix knob, or I like to put the pitch or format to change the pitch and format over time. So if I do it manually now, this is one sound. This is another sound. I can go pitch up, and this is the pitch up, or I can change the pitch over time. So it's really cool for stuff like that. And it's just, you can just get a lot more variations on the sound effects that you're creating with that. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to add some impacts here. So I'm going to add some, let's add some impacts on here and see what kind of stuff we can get. So I'm just going to solo this just to see what I can get. So they're okay. I do want to add trash though, because I want them to be way more distorted than that. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to do a heavy. This is going to be pretty loud, so I'm going to turn it down. So let's try that in context. I'm going to turn the fluctuator on again for these so that they just fluctuate more, the more randomness of the sound. So that's cool. Now, if I want the impact to hit more and duck these two other sounds, what I can do here is I can bring down the threshold, and this should probably help a little bit. So let's hear that. If I bring the release up, the sounds will take longer to come back in. It's a little too much though, because what's happening now is that it's just ducking it too much. So I'm just going to go like this, maybe like that. So now I have a basic sound going. Again, on my master here, I'm just going to add ozone just to make sure that I'm not clipping and that everything's kind of the loudest it could possibly be. So that's pretty good. Now what I can just do is press R and then find some new sounds. And if I don't want these, so these could be some cool like whoosh sounds or spell casting sounds. So what I'm going to try to do now is add a filter here. And let's put it up a little bit. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll play with the volume here, so I have something like this. If you want, you could even add the built-in reverb, though you can also input your own reverb if you have one. So I'm just going to do the built-in one here. And let's randomize again. So what you can also do here is to make the impact even more. You can do similar to the pitch here with a filter. So I'm going to bring it down way more so it just hits really hard. And then with the actual impact samples, and let's randomize again. Let's do an all pass filter. Now what's also cool here is that you can add some wind noise if you wanted to, and an LFO to add some warble, which is cool. And what's also cool is you can learn these. I forget how you do it. I think you have to press Control or something, or double click or right click. I don't remember, but you can learn these and assign them to your keyboard if you wanted to. I don't remember how to do it exactly, but it is possible. Anyways, these I don't use very much. But hopefully you start to see like how powerful this is, because now I have these two sample banks. I can keep randomizing the impacts, and I always get a new sound. And then I can always get even more variation on the sound, or a different sound completely based on the pitch that I'm using. And the pitch is affecting all the samples. So you're always getting something new, something different, which is really awesome. And then of course, if you add more plugins, whatever, you can mess up the sound even more. So. And this is how I like to do it. And I like to do it manually because I have a lot more control over the pace of the sound and the sound effect. And especially because I usually like to go like kind of slow at the beginning and then fast through the impact and then slower at the end. But when you're doing it automatic, it's just all the same throughout. So it can still sound good, but... Anyways, this is the kind of my workflow and how I like to use it, how I like to use WaveWarper here. So pretty powerful, especially because you can use your own plugins. The last thing I'm going to just mention here is that you can record up here, and then you'll just pick a folder on your computer wherever you want it to record, and then you'll record. It'll record until you press stop. So as many takes and sounds that you go through, it'll record everything, and then once you press stop, then it'll just automatically save it to that folder. So that's pretty awesome. And then of course, you can save presets. So let's say I like this setup here, I just shift click here, and then now it's saved up here. So I can always recall it whenever I load in and start up WaveWarper. So yes, this is WaveWarper. Pretty powerful. I've been really liking it, especially for this project. But now let's kind of switch gears here and let's go into Whoosh by Tonsturm. All right, so here is Whoosh by Tonsturm, and actually it says up here Whoosh by Melded Sounds because this is when the company used to be called Melded Sounds. It's version 1.1. This is a version I like to use. I don't know if it's still available. Right now they're at version 1.5. So I don't know if you can go back like versions. The reason why I like this one though is because you have the option to import a load of sounds. So you can import up to 127 sounds for each sound source. In the new version, you can only do 12 for each source, which is really annoying because it's just not very much. Whenever you're trying to randomize stuff, it's just to me, it's not enough. At least not to my liking. So that's why I like to use this one. Anyways, let's have a listen to what it can do. So you actually have 3 different sections here. So up here, you have your effects. In the middle here, you have your engine. This is where your sound goes. It's like the XY pattern kind of. So it goes from right to left for the sound. And then down here, you have all your sources. So I already imported all the sound sources, the same sound sources I used for WaveWarper in here. And so what you'll see here is that there's actually 2 modes that you can use. One is the loop mode. And this is actually what WaveWarper does. WaveWarper, the way it works is it only loops your audio files continuously in the background. And then whenever you're playing across the XY, then it'll play based on wherever it is looping from. So it's always looping in the background. So you can do the same thing here. Or what I like to do is the gray mode because it's unique to Whoosh. So what it'll do is based on where you are in the engine here. So as you can see here, I'm manually doing this with my mod wheel, by the way. You can see that it's playing through the WAV file. So if I bring it down to a regular, so just going forward at 1, you'll see that based on the wave, where it is in the engine, it's following with the sound file. And what you'll also notice is that it's automatically randomizing the sound file. So that's because I've clicked this R button here, which is to randomize the files. And right now I'm randomizing between 0 and 88 because that's how many files I imported. So that's what it's doing here. So what I like to do is grain. You can do Pro, and you have a few more control options. I like to just leave it on easy, and then I like to do Cloud. I find it just sounds better. And then I usually like to put the size around here. And what's great is you can do an alternate. So what this does is it'll go through the file back and forth while the engine goes through it once. So I'll just play it, and then you guys can see based on the engine, it'll go to the end and then back. So it'll go through and granularize the entire file like once forward and once back while the engine goes through it once. So I just find you get more variation from that, and you just get more out of your sound file. Now, obviously not always necessary, but it's nice to know that it's there. So that's what I've done with all of these sound files here. So I've already put them all on grain, easy, cloud. You could also change the pitch and the pan. I don't normally touch these, but maybe you might want to. So I might go like that, like that, like that. So you can get a much wider sound that way. Now for the impacts, I imported all my impacts here, and there's again 4 sources for your impacts. I only imported 16 impacts, so I split them up between the 4 sources, so 0 to 4, 5 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 16. And then they always hit whenever you're crossing this center line here, like that. Now, what you might notice here is that as I cross over, even though the engine reaches the end here, you're still hearing the sound, which is a little bit annoying. Maybe you can fix it based on the release here. But again, like you can't really control that as far as I'm aware. There's a few options that you can control. One is the position, like where do you want it to hit? Usually the center is the best. And then you can change the like which hits first, which is pretty cool. So you get more of a powerful impact that way. You can change the pitch. And you can change the amplitude, which is the volume. And what I'm doing here is the modulation. This is the modulation over time. So it follows the engine. So as I get closer to the middle, the pitch is going up, and then it's going to go back down after I cross. I think that's what it's doing here. So yeah, so let's hear it in context with all 4 sources. Let's have the context here. And another thing that you have here is the mixer. So right now I'm only hearing the sound sources. So I want to hear a bit of the impact. So if I just hear this, you don't hear any impact. I'll bring it in a bit. I already put up the ducking. So let's hear that. Let's hear a bit more. Maybe bring the amplitude up a bit. If I want more ducking, I can just put it more, which just means it's going to kill these sources more. So this is basically how Whoosh works. Now, one thing that's different with Whoosh from WaveWarper is that you actually have built-in effects here. You can also, of course, because the reactor ensemble, you can put in your own insert effects on the channel, but it also comes with built-in effects. So one is the Doppler effect here. You also have a delay. So let's say I wanted to have a delay here. I could do that. Well, now what's cool is that you see there's 2 LFOs. So let's say I want the mix to be LFO1, and you'll see if LFO1 follows the engine here. So I'm right here on the engine, and it just follows it. And then, so if I want LFO1 to affect the mix, I can make it go up. So as I'm going across, the mix is going to go up, and then when I'm past the cross line, then it's going to start going down again, which you can hear. So I might increase these a little. And now what I'm just going to modulate the left and right channel with the two different LFOs. Maybe I'll do the LFO times 2, so it'll go twice as fast. So you're just getting a different modulation between the left and right channel. So that's pretty cool. Of course, you have your tremolo again, which is the same thing as in WaveWarper. And again, you have your LFOs, and you can link these to the LFOs. So if I turn this off and make it like this, speed down. Right, and then of course you have an EQ, which I don't ever usually use, and then I have my drive here, which is just what you expect, a bit of drive here, or distortion. And you also have a compressor here, and at the end you have your limiter. So this is a basic run through of the plugin and what it can do. Again, very similar to WaveWarper, but again, a few differences as well. So one thing that I want to mention that I forgot to mention here is that for the Doppler engine, for Whoosh here, you can actually change the speed of the curve, which is really cool. So let's have a listen to that. So if you put it on run, which is going to make it run automatically, this is kind of like WaveWarper. You can make it run automatically and it'll just go through every time and just randomize it every time it goes through, which is fine. But what's cool about this one is that you can actually have more control over what it can do. So for example, if I run it, fine, sounds great. But what I can also do is make the left side go faster and the right side go slower like this. I can create impacts if I go all the way down, which is cool. Even if I turn off the impacts here, right? You're creating impacts just from these sound sources, which is cool. I can make the opposite. Right, so you have a lot more options in terms of running it automatically. And that's the one way I like to use it sometimes. So I might just go here, press record, let it run, and you'll have different ones getting printed out. Then I can also change the duration. So I actually have to stop it. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down a little bit here. Let's go like 1.5, so it's gonna be faster. Maybe longer. Right, so a bit more control over the engine here compared to WaveWarper. All right, so hopefully this has shown you a better idea of what both can do and how they're similar, but also how they're a bit different. So, and that's kind of what I want to discuss a bit further here about these two pieces of software. So for one, obviously, Whoosh is a Reactor ensemble, so you need to have the full version of Reactor if you want to use it, while WaveWarper is a standalone plugin. So there's kind of that to take into consideration, depending on if you have Reactor or not. You might want to just go for WaveWarper. The other one is WaveWarper doesn't have any built-in effects other than like the reverb and the warbler. So other than that, like you're kind of stuck with whatever sounds you have and plugins you have. So if you don't have very much or you're just starting out, maybe it makes a bit more sense to go with Reactor. So again, another point to take into consideration. Another thing I wrote down here is that for Whoosh, it's a lot easier to randomize sounds and randomize them like over and over again just by clicking on the R button, because then it'll just cycle through sounds every time you cross over that center impact line. So every time you're crossing over, you're getting a new sound, a new variation. You don't ever have to click R or randomize or anything. It's just going to do it automatically. So you're just always creating these new sounds and ideas that you can just automatically print onto your DAW and have all these files generated and have ideas, or just use them as is. So that's really easy, and you can't really do that with WaveWarper. You have to always press R to randomize the sound. So that's something to think about. Though, to be honest, for me, WaveWarper still I find more powerful because I can import my own plugins, and using my plugins, I create more variation using, for example, the pitch on the XY pattern. And using that, I can then create different pitch sounds, or I can create different sounds by putting on a reverb and then change the mix knob with that, or putting on a multi-effects unit like Amalgam and then change the mix knob with that as well, create like just randomize everything and then create new sounds just from that. So I find it a lot easier and more, you have a lot more control over the sound effects that you're creating using WaveWarper. Probably one of the biggest differences between the two is that for Whoosh, it's a Doppler engine, so it already has built-in like the Doppler effect, so the change of pitch over time and the EQ change over time. So that's kind of nice because it's already built in, and if you do want to have that kind of Doppler effect, it's really easy to do. One of the things I didn't really show in this video is that you can actually change the distance of the Doppler effect. So if something's like further away, obviously you're going to have less of an effect over time compared to if something's really close. So you do have those controls within Whoosh, but you don't have that within WaveWarper. Within WaveWarper, you just control the pitch and the pan and the filter by yourself, which, to be honest, depending on what you're working on, that's totally fine. Like if you're doing like spaceship sounds or something like that, then yeah, sure, maybe you want to use something like Whoosh. But when you're creating casts and spells and things like that, I found WaveWarper to be perfectly good enough to be creating exactly the sound that you want to create. So that's definitely been my go-to for that. And then the other one that perhaps I didn't mention is that, well, I mentioned it in the video, but I'll say it again, is that Whoosh has a granular engine, while WaveWarper just plays your sound files on loop. So it's always looping your sound files, while Whoosh has the option to put it into a granular engine or to loop. So a bit more powerful in that sense. But again, to me, it's not a deal breaker. They're both really powerful, and it just depends on how you want to use it. So yeah, so this is basically it for my comparison. So let's talk a bit about price. They're actually both the exact same price. They're both at $99 at regular price. You can get them on discount. Tonsturm definitely has sales throughout the year. I'm not sure about Soundmorph. I think Soundmorph has some software sales, though I'm more aware of their sound pack sales, but I'm sure they have some software sales as well. So I don't know how much they go for on sale, but something to maybe look out for if you're looking to get one of these two plugins. All right, so final thoughts on these. So I don't really have a preference for either or. For my current workflow, WaveWarper has been my go-to just because I find it easier, more flexible. I can import my own plugins, which I want, because then I can shape the sound exactly how I want them to be. So I find it more powerful because of that. So that's been the one I've been going to recently. Not that I would put aside Whoosh and not use Whoosh, but it hasn't been as... for the projects I'm working on, we're creating spells, it's just not as easy. And Whoosh is just so much easier, and you can just get so many more sounds out of it. So that's been my go-to. But I'm curious to know what you guys use and which ones you guys would pick up based on the projects that you guys are working on or the sounds that you're using. So I'd be curious to know. So let me know in the comments below. All right, so I think that's pretty much it for this video. If you guys are interested in seeing how else I use Whoosh by Tonsturm, I actually made a video of like 3 creative ways that I like to use it. So I'll put that in the card up here if you guys want to check it out. And I think that's pretty much it. So anyways, I'd be interested to know how you guys use these, or which one you use and why you actually use them. So yeah, let me know in the comments below. And if you guys have any questions, of course, always leave it in the comments below. I always do my best to answer them. And make sure to check the description for that free sound pack. And I think that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.